My name is Nikki, I'm the Obsessive Bookseller, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going over my wrap-up for February 2022. It was a short month, but it felt like a really low-pressure month, so I actually did read a lot of books, but I didn't read a lot of books from my TBR for the month. I tried to, but one of them was a chunker. In fact, we'll start with that one. I am currently reading Malice. My intention was to read the entire book this month, but it's very dense. Well, not dense per se, but there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of characters to keep track of, and I'm liking it so much that I want to take my time and make sure I really know who is who. I get incredibly particular when it comes to big tomes like this with lots of names to keep track of if I like it, because I've discovered once I forget who we're with and kind of confuse characters, then I lose complete investment in the story, and then I just end up reading without really absorbing anything. So yes, this is one that I feel like I need to be very precise with. And I've been reading for a couple weeks, and I'm approaching halfway through it. It's funny, I don't like to know a lot about the books that I read before I dive in, and so all I was going off of was word of mouth that this was a great series and cover appeal. I kept thinking based on the covers that this was a series of 4 books that take place completely, 100%, on a battle scene. Just a vague impression of just battles going on constantly. And that is not even close to what we are getting. It's kind of like a pastoral classic fantasy so far, but with enough details and complexity that kind of remind me of Game of Thrones in that regard. A lot of moving pieces, each perspective as important as the last. So far, really good. I'll be continuing this into the next month, which is going to be a bit awkward because I also need to read In the Shadow of the Gods for a book club. So I'm going to have 2 John Gwyns going at once, which is a bit weird. That's kind of like having chocolate cake while having chocolate pie. And I do love chocolate, but you know, sometimes spreading these things out can be better for your soul. But it is what it is. I read God's War by Cameron Hurley. It's the first book in the Beldam Apocrypha. This was a really interesting book. About what I expected from this author. Very visceral writing, things that are put in for shock value, and really creative ideas. Heavy use of bugs. Like, that's part of the magic system of this world, actually, is bugs. And magic system in a sci-fi? Yeah. It didn't really read like a science fiction to me. It read more like an urban fantasy that could have taken place on any version of a post-apocalyptic Earth. But it did have hints of space travel, so perhaps we will see more in future books. But overall, I like this one. I also finally finished The Thief Queen's Daughter by Elizabeth Hayden. This has been on my TBR for like 6 months. I've said before that if I know anything about what the story is going to contain, like major plot points, then I'm really less interested in reading it. And in this case, the title of this one gives a lot more away than I feel like it should. So, like the big reveal, ooh, yeah, we already knew that. But this one had a little bit more of a narrow focus than the first book, not as much exploration. There were a ton of fun elements in here that a middle school age me would have absolutely loved. I wish I had read these several years ago. The quality of the writing is top-notch. The rich world building is amazing. The place we were exploring, I feel like was explored to its potential. It was really cool. It's just not the single plot point element of the series that I'm really excited to read about. So yeah, this one felt like a tangent a bit for me, but I still am planning to continue. I finished Where the Drowned Girls Go by Sheehan McGuire. I have a review up for this one, the latest in the Wayward Children series, which evidently has been picked up by Paramount Pictures, so it's going to be turned into either a TV series or something. So that's kind of cool. I think it would translate to film pretty well. Overall, not my favorite of the series, but in the upper half. I really like the overall story arc for the series that this one may have indicated is going to happen, but I've long since stopped trying to predict where this author is going next, but yeah, some cool things in this one. It was the eeriest one yet. And I finally continued in the buddy read for the Vlad Taltos series by Stephen Brust. Yes, I know how to say everything now. Thank you for the commenters. So the first thing we read is Tiasa, or at least the first third of it, because chronologically that's when it takes place. And then we jumped into Jerrig, which, if you're not doing the chronological order, is the publisher's suggested #1 book. But chronologically, it's like 6th or 7th in line. So yes, we are reading Jerrig now. It's my second read through of it. I'm almost finished with it. Just as good as the first time around. I think after experiencing part of the series chronologically and part of the series per publisher suggestion, I think the publishers have the edge on this one. If you've read the series before, the chronological order is a blast. If you haven't read the series, I would suggest starting with publisher order. I read and loved The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This was such a fun book, and it wasn't even on my radar until just a month ago, but it seemed like the perfect breath of fresh air between all the other things that I was reading. And basically anything you can imagine that John Scalzi would do with a kaiju theme for his book, yeah, you're right on. Anything you're imagining that he would do with that storyline, that's what you got. It was so much fun, so cheeky, very reminiscent of his Old Man War. He definitely has a certain tone that he narrates with and infuses his characters with, and this was no exception. And then I made progress with, but it wasn't a priority, In the Shadow of Lightning by Brian McClellan. I'm about 15% of the way in. It's going to be my physical read for March, and I am loving it so far. It is so unconventional. It's taken me a while to get acclimated with the world. He's doing a lot of unconventional things with it, and I'm trying to get grounded on what type of world this is. There are so many things still left to explore. I love the magic system. It's like power-infused glass. There's like hints of a murder mystery, but really great characters that I love him for. So far, this one's really cool. And then this is kind of odd. I probably would have been further along in Malice had I not truly embraced going with the flow this month. And to that end, I picked up 3 nonfiction. I hadn't planned on picking up 3 nonfiction, but I like to have one going for when I don't have the concentration needed to focus on the heavy fantasy novels. So I picked up 7 Days of Simplicity by Jen Hatmaker. I only had to look up her name once. It stuck in my brain. I did not love this book. It had some basic good ideas of things to focus on if you are kind of starting a minimalist journey. There were just a couple of nuggets. I think it's meant more as an inspiration as opposed to a how-to. I think you could look at just the chapter headings and get an idea of the types of things to focus on and then move on with your life. It's a little harsh. I'm basically saying you don't need to read the book, just kind of see what the book's about and use that as inspiration. And many of the things she discussed I had already been working on, so it was just kind of reinforcement in that regard. And it does use a very heavy religious overtone, so it's not really an instruction guide, but if you trust in the Lord, he'll figure it out for you, which I imagine might be a lot more inspirational to some than others. One of the highlights of my month was reading Getting Things Done by David Allen. I went to business school. I've heard of this book for years. I've sold this book for years. The special edition came out. We sold more of those. And I had always heard little nuggets, like little hints of information from this book. And I am realizing after having read it that they are good bits of information, like the 2-minute rule. And the idea of breaking down tasks into smaller bite-sized chunks to make them less overwhelming. But both of those ideas, out of context of his book, don't even begin to dig into the richness of why you do those things. And so I'm all over it. I implemented his system. I was already kind of doing most of the things, so it wasn't as big of a revelation as it could have been. But yeah, so far, I've been on top of my game more now than I have in years, and I think it has to do with being able to let things out of my brain and focus on appropriate attention on what I've got going on in front of me, and it has been really cool. So I'm a getting things done believer. I don't believe I would have gotten as much out of the book had I not seen the TED Talk on the subject ahead of time. It kind of gives things a more comprehensive presentation, and the thing that stood out to me most was the balance of control versus perspective, because I'm over here on control and you need a bit of both. Anyway, enough on that. I'm not going to do a review on it because that's not what this channel is for, so I figure I can talk a little bit more in detail during my wrap-up, but I'll link the TED Talk if you're interested, and yeah. But when I read that, see, this is really how far I got derailed. When I read that, I'm like, that's all great and good. All of the systems that I'm putting in, great. But I would be getting a whole lot more done if I wasn't on my frickin' phone all day. So I reread this month Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport to kind of reinforce some things. Last time I read it, I got myself off of Facebook and Instagram. Like, that in itself was great, but that habit of constantly picking up my phone throughout the day, checking comments, all of that, so prevalent in my life right now, and I'm trying to get away from that again. So reread it, re-emphasized, got some good perspective again on the whys. Like, why do I want to go digitally minimal? What do I want to spend my time on instead of being on my phone? That's what I love most about the book. It's not like The Social Network where they're trying to shock you into not using your phone anymore. They talk about that stuff, but it's very much about what kind of life do you want to lead, not the phone is evil. No, he very much refers to the phone as a tool, and you get to decide, once you break yourself of that addiction of checking it constantly, how much you want to use it in your daily life, what you find enhances your life instead of takes away from. So yeah, a couple of subjects that I'm very passionate about. I love productivity, I love organization. I'm very interested in simplifying my life and giving myself more time to do the things that bring me joy, which includes running this channel. So yeah, I don't have any plans to read any more nonfiction for a little while. I think I've got my fill, and I'm still kind of percolating what I learned from these ones, but weirder things have happened. It's all part of my reading journey. So wrapping up, I read 9 books this month. A couple of them were novellas, but overall I'm really impressed with that. For February, shortest month, I had so much going on. I lost an entire week to personal taxes, and then I've been implementing that productivity system, so instead of taking a few more minutes of downtime to read throughout the day, I've been just doing all the things, and it's been really fun. But I'm hoping going into March that I will have a little more time and space. The digitally minimalism thing has actually freed up some time to help me read a little bit more. For example, first thing in the morning, I have that impulse to pick up my phone and check it, but instead I'm making myself open a book. So thank you for joining me on this video. I want to know, did you read anything fun in March? Any new all-time favorites? I think Malice is gonna be for me, but it is still early. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.